Well, hello everyone, and welcome. Nothing like some futuristic vibes to get us in the zone for our conversation today, which we know is going to be super meaningful and valuable. And we're really glad that you can join us. And we are super excited to have the Trybl AI team here with us today. Just a couple of housekeeping announcements before we get started. If you don't mind making sure that your Zoom name actually is your name and your company. That'll help us to make sure we know who we're seeing and who we're chatting with today. If you're able to, please turn on your cameras. We would love to see who we're talking with. And it helps to make our conversation much more engaging because really a lot of this today is going to be about you and what's going to make this meaningful and valuable for you. We are going to have breakout rooms about halfway through today. So we're going to start together as a main group, and then it's going to be a little bit of a choose your own adventure to get what is most meaningful and valuable for you. So we'll give you a little bit more clarity of directions of what to expect when that time comes. But a couple of small giants announcements just to have this on your radar. A few things for you to know about. Our Leadership Academy applications are currently open. So if it's either something you are interested or you think that someone on your team might really benefit from some leadership development and training through the lens of the small giants philosophies and principles. Applications are currently open through the fall. So please let us know. You can also see some links in the chat for some more information. We also have a really fun kind of renewed event coming up that is taking place in Dallas this September 11th through 12th. It is our Passport, which is essentially your chance to go behind the scenes and visit a couple of Small Giants companies to see how they operate, see what they're doing to really bring Small Giants to life. So that is open. Tickets are currently available. We'd love to have you come hang out with us and join us. We also have our next virtual event coming up on September 30th, which is Community Connections. And that is a chance for you to problem share and help solve challenges that one another are navigating. So, would love to have you come and join us, kind of just like we are today. And then, of course, our summit is coming up next year, which is going to be here before you know it. It is going to be next April 28th through 30th in Detroit. Our theme that we just announced for our annual summit is Navigate. So we are going to be digging into topics all around what it means to navigate your business, yourself as a leader, your future, your purpose, your values, all of those good things. So be sure to check that out because prices are going to be going up soon from their discounted rate. So we want you to get the best deal possible. All right. All those good things will continue to live in the chat, so you can always head on over to it as needed. But without further ado, let's get into it because we're all here to discuss AI and what it means for ourselves and our teams and our businesses. And there is no one better than the Trybl team to be here today to talk with you. Trybl AI are experts in focusing on the future of AI and what solutions for your business and your team actually mean. So we are so excited to have Patty, Trybl CEO, JJ, Trybl CTO, and Hassan, Trybl Solution Engineer with us, who are going to go deep and going to give us all of the things that we need to feel extra prepared. Those best practices, kind of the concepts of how we can start to put this into play for the future of our business. So, with that, it is my pleasure to welcome the Trybl team here with us, a fellow Small Giants company. So, let's give them a virtual round of applause as we turn our Zoom stage on over to them.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. We are new Small Giants community members, and I have to say, we have had such an incredible warm welcome from the Small Giants crew, Heidi and Bridget and Katie and the other members that we know for some other places. So we feel really at home here. So thank you so much for welcoming us and asking for our perspectives. We actually don't consider ourselves experts. We consider ourselves smart. We consider ourselves guides, but we're figuring it out just like you guys are. And honestly, anybody in AI who claims they've got it all figured out, introduce them to me because I would love to have that intro. But there's certainly nothing that's impacting our businesses more. And so going down that path and going through those experimentations and those understanding and those shared experiences together as a community, we're thrilled to be able to lead those conversations. So with me, as Katie said, is JJ and Hassan. They're going to lead when we break out and go more into the kind of that technical side with some of the prompt engineering, while some of you stay with me and we start talking through some of those bigger concepts and those bigger questions. But before we break out, we just wanted to spend a little bit of time level setting, making sure that we all had some common definitions and also helping you guys understand how did we get here. Because for me, how we got here really does impact kind of our philosophies, our perspectives, and our viewpoint of how to utilize AI. So Trybl is actually my second startup company. I founded Odea, which is a digital marketing company, a little bit over 20 years ago. And had you asked me, 3 years ago, hey Patty, how is Odea going to deal with AI? I'd have said hard pass. Go talk to JJ, go talk to Hassan. But I've gone through my technology revolutions, right? I'm old enough that I remember marketing before the internet, before e-commerce, before web, before social, before SEO, before all these things. Like I've gone through mine. I managed a company through COVID. I've had my share of disruption. Thank you. I'm going to bow out. And then we had it at Odea, what we call my oh shit moment. And we were presenting a brand to a startup rebar company down in Arkansas. We'd worked with the executive team previously. They were excited. They said, let's take it to our first 30 team members who were maintenance supervisors and mill managers, guys who, and I say guys because they were all guys who actually worked the mill. And we gave them our brand concept, and they were lukewarm at best. And the CEO is like, oh, what's wrong? I don't know what. Work with Odea, figure it out, which is very typical Dave. So we asked them for input. They went back. They were very thoughtful, and they brought back to us some input, including the 3 icons created by ChatGPT that you see in front of you. Now, we can all agree these are not awesome, but it did 2 things for us. It was really good input for my team, and we did a great brand with them. But it also made me realize that I wasn't going to be able to tap out before this hit who we were at Odea. So we did what we typically do with technology. We rolled up our sleeves, we dug in, we got super smart. And what we soon realized was that how AI was going to impact marketing was one component, but how AI was going to impact everything else we do from an operational standpoint, both as Odea, but for other small and mid-sized companies, companies like us who ran how we run, which makes it a little bit different than how our competition does. There was an opportunity there for us to become a good partner. So we launched Trybl, really realizing that AI was not just going to become, another marketing tool for us, but was really going to become operational for how we ran as a company and how we could help others. So that's the origin story of Trybl. And the reason I like to start with that is to let anyone know who's out there, no matter where you are on that spectrum, whether you're still like, I'm not sure, maybe hard pass, or all the way through, I'm convinced. I'm there with you. I've been there with you. Sometimes I revert back to, do I really have to do this again? But the opportunities and the impact that we're seeing and we're able to work with other companies on making on their businesses make me pretty happy that we're on this journey again. So with that, a couple common definitions. I'm going to turn it over to JJ and Hassan to just make sure to level set. What is this AI as we dig in?
Yeah. So thank you, Patty, for the intro. So what is AI? Artificial intelligence um, is trained on lots and lots of data. And so AI can spot patterns within that data, and by recognizing patterns, it can conclude, uh, have conclusions from that form into human interactions that you interact with. And we will get into a lot of those other ways here soon. And then what's the key difference between AI and traditional software is that AI adapts to the information that it is given and it is trained on. And so when you prompt it to give you specific info, then you're making it useful to you and not you're able to get uh, information that isn't messy and incomplete, but it will connect the dots between those.
Awesome. So with that being said, what is AI not? We hear a lot about AI being the silver bullet, it's the replacement for you, all of those things, but as it stands right now, it's not. But I do say that with a grain of salt, because if you look at what these companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, what they're aiming for, that is exactly that. It would be a job replacement. But as of right now, we're not close to it. As of right now, it's an intern that makes your job easier. It makes you better at what you already know, and it makes you much more efficient.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about that error-free in ours when we talk about trust. But obviously, anyone who's utilizing these LLMs or these tools are all seeing the disclaimers of it is not error-free, because it is not that traditional software of go do the very set parameter, but it is in recognizing patterns, being asked to mimic human judgment in human interactions. And we all know that as humans, we are not error-free either. Important different from, what we would call traditional software and AI software. Some of the perspectives, some of the thoughts that we bring into that is, as we say, it's not a job replacement, and as our view is that it really is that human first. We so believe in that the symbol, the logo for our company, the bird is actually a very specific bird. It's called a Sankofa. And that loosely translates from a Ghanaian tribe of go back and get it. And that really is our perspective on how right now AI can be most impactful for you and your organization is going back into what you already do well, what you're already great at, that superpower, that, USP, if I put on my marketer's hat, what makes you good and better than your competition, and bringing that forward and partnering that with AI, that together is how companies can really harness that power of these technologies right now.
Awesome. So that's our perspective as Trybl. For other people, whether you're a consumer or a business owner, like many of you, what perspective do y'all have and what do other people in your shoes have? So the first thing is that it levels the playing field. If you think about, so for me, by trade, I'm a developer, right? Developers, world-class developers that are working at these large companies, they are extremely, extremely expensive. That work costs you anywhere from 500K and above a year. So now, if you have an idea as a business owner to implement software into your company, you might not have the means to go and hire the best talent. But say next week AI becomes the best software engineer that there is out there, you can get someone that's decent, but can augment their abilities through AI, and they will be able to write code that's on a whole nother level. Now, with that being said, point three is that it expands domain knowledge. Even though AI might be the best software engineer out there, Patty will probably not be able to get the same results with it that I would, because that's my domain. And vice versa, I can't put out a great marketing campaign because that's not my niche. That's Patty's niche. So with AI, as it stands right now, it's going to make you much better at what you're already good at, and it's going to make you slightly better at what you are not good at all, right? And so with all that being said, it still requires humans. If you want to do better, you still need a human who knows a little bit about that niche or about that domain. And then you go from there.
Yeah, the other thing you're going to hear us say a lot throughout this is treating AI like an intern. And that is a guiding principle for us at Trybl. So just as if you got a super smart intern, you'd want to give him or her some examples of things that you've done, the data, then to go create another, and then ask them to come back to you and review what they had done, what they've created, make some course corrections, do it again, get better and better and better at it. That is our view of AI. And with Hassan, we always put an asterisk at that, currently. But by utilizing it, giving it good examples, here's things that we've done, here's things that we trust, here's things that we know, here's some new additional we'd like you to mimic. And then again, reviewing that allows you to get a lot of comfort when it comes to areas like trust, like accuracy, and also how you implement it in a way that your team feels supported and not replaced.
And so we will be talking about AI, but also LLMs. LLMs are your Geminis, your Claudes, your ChatGPTs, your Copilot, your Perplexity, so on and so forth. Those are all LLMs, and they've been trained on lots and lots of data, to the same point of that it finds patterns, within that data, and it allows it to interact with you in a human way of either voice or text, or just pictures.
So, how can you interact with LLMs? There's multiple different ways. A lot of times you might not even know that you're using AI because it's been embedded directly into whatever tool you're already using. An example of that would be, anything in the Microsoft suite, whether that's PowerPoint or Word, you'll always see a little Copilot icon that you can use uh, within the application. So then you have embedded tool, then you have web-based. Web-based incorporates, using it as an app on your phone or going to chatgpt.com. Voice-based, which allows you to go from voice input, so you speak to it and it speaks back to you, and then API and agent. So if you're building anything with an API, you'll need a developer since that requires coding. And if you're building an agent, you will require an API. So then once again, you'll require a technical person.
So with that kind of common understanding, kind of basis for who we are, how we got here, and our perspectives, we're ready to head into our breakout rooms, Miss Katie and Miss Bridget.
Thank you so much, Patty, JJ, and Hassan. That was a great overview to get us started. And now we are going to jump into our breakout rooms. So Heidi is going to open them for us here in a second, and you'll have two options. The first room will be the room for doers, which is tactical prompt training. So walking through kind of how to refine prompts and get some more useful targeted responses from AI. And then the second room will be the room for leaders, which is more of a strategic AI outlook, built for leaders asking the big questions. How do you experiment with AI? How do you implement? How can it support your team? Those sorts of things. So I'll throw that in the chat here so that you can keep track of which is which. And then Heidi, you are free to open the rooms.
So yes, if you have questions throughout, feel free chat. We love keeping communication open with everyone, having a discussion. We feel like that's when presentations like this are best, is when we're having conversations. And so with no further to do, I will go ahead and start. I will let Hassan take this, and then we will kind of keep on going forward.
Awesome. Thanks, JJ. So getting right into it, what is prompt engineering? So, we hear about prompt engineering all the time as being the way to getting better answers out of AI. So that's exactly what it is. It's the skill of crafting clear and concise instructions to get the best results from AI systems. So an analogy I like to use when explaining this is this exercise, this peanut butter and jelly exercise that we did in school. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with it, but essentially the exercise is you have to teach a robot how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, everyone will write their instructions. You need bread, you need jelly, you need peanut butter, you need a knife. You smear the peanut butter on a slice of bread, then you do the jelly. So then, you would read these instructions and then the robot would take the entire jar of peanut butter and start, trying to spread it across the bread, which obviously, the point is that you forgot to tell it to open the jar and scoop it out. So that's kind of the mindset that we should be in when it comes to prompting, just because, these are machines. They can do a lot of things. They can do everything as long as you ask them how to do it the right way.
Mhm.
So there's that. And then also the other thing is that it's a learnable skill that improves with practice. Think of it like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. If you stop using it, it's going to go away. Um,
Mhm.
and prompt engineering applies across all AI tools. So if you learn the techniques that you'll learn today can be applied across Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, and all the rest of them as well.
including AI tools such as Copilot and using
Mhm.
that to create whatever it is that you need within Copilot.
Mhm.
And so I know we showed this slide in the opening, but wanted to bring it back up um, as embedded tools such as Microsoft Suite. You also have note taker apps that record meetings and take notes for you. And so that's what we include in embedded tools. And you're able to do things within those programs. Web-based, again, chat, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, um, voice-based. We give the example of um, that Hassan had a conversation with a friend. Hassan speaks English. His friend speaks fluent Spanish, and so they're able to have a conversation through using chat or Claude or Gemini. And so Hassan will speak in English, and it will translate automatically to Spanish and then Spanish to English. So then they're able to have that conversation. That is probably the best thing I can think of for voice, and that it's able to help with those areas. And then, of course, API agent is a lot of development connecting API into your application as well.
Yeah, one point I just want to make on that one that we didn't make earlier. So API, we didn't talk about what that is. That's essentially a bridge between two technologies that allows data to pass through. So with an API, if I'm using a ChatGPT API, I can build an application. I would use that API. So if I want to make an AI application that's custom, I would be utilizing that API.
Cool. So you have lots of options. And so chat is the most friendliest interface that we've ran into. Um, Also, chat, Claude, Gemini, um, they have different versions of team plans that you can have. And so each person, again, would have a seat on the team. And so when you're in the team plan, you're able to have custom GPTs. I think Claude is projects, um, and so on. And so you're able to share robust custom GPTs that has inputs from your uh, company, your business, the info that you're wanting GPT or chat or Claude to recognize and use. As well as on any paid version, I will say, throwing that in here is what we will call securing your data. When you're paying for a AI um, you're usually able to make it so then your data isn't shareable and trainable to GPT or Claude, and that it won't use that data and share it with others or within training models. And so for Claude, um, Claude is the best to have it do complex tasks. It has more of a conversational feel. So does chat. Um, but Claude has more of a human aspect to it. Um, and Claude also doesn't train on your data by default. And then you also have Gemini. And then you have Google's AI mode, which I am sure a lot of you have seen. Google's AI mode in the top left when you're searching on Google. That it pops up and then it's basically a Gemini version, but within Google search. Um, and then Copilot within Microsoft, and then you have other ones that we didn't put on here, such as Perplexity, Grok, which is X's AI, um, etc.
Awesome. So now for the fun stuff. Let's get into some actual prompting strategies. So the first prompting strategy is direct example prompting. This is essentially where you show the AI a detailed sample for it to be able to see your style, structure, tone, whatever it might be. So going back to that intern example, right? Let's imagine you just hired an intern, it's their first day. You give them a task. When you give them that task, you're probably going to tell them how you want them to do it and also show them an example of the outcome. So that's exactly what you're doing right here. You explain what you want the AI to do, and then you give it a direct example of you having done that task in the past so that it can learn from the way you did it and what you're asking it to do. What this does is that it reduces the guesswork for the AI. You're being um, very specific, So like going back to the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it's about being specific and just trying to take out the guesswork. And that's exactly what this does. And this is best for when you know exactly what you're looking to get out of it. There's certain use cases where you kind of want to give AI free reins and see what it comes up with. This would not be a use case for that. Um, yeah.
So direct examples or example prompting, rather example, there we go. Um, is the first step is to give an example of your desired output. So for this one, we have here is an example of how we document procedures XYZ. And so you will go into details of how you want AI to um, give out an output and the end result that you're looking for. Step two is to provide clear directions. Now, using this format and level of detail, write a blank. And so it will use all of those directions that you're giving it. So then you're keeping it on a straight and narrow path to the end result that you're looking for.
Awesome. So what does this look like in practice? So, once again, we start with here's an example of how we document procedures. So that line right there is kind of like the pretense of you giving it additional context. So, here's an example, dot, 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 dot. You get into it, start the mixing machine, check that all safety guards are in place, power on the machine, so on and so forth. Now, once you're done providing that context, you get into now using this format and level of detail. That's kind of like the buzzword for it to be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to do it. So after that, you provide it its final task. So write a standard operating procedure for shutting down the production line at the end of a shift. Um, yeah, and so essentially, you would rework this based off of your own use case and what you're looking to apply the strategy to. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. Um, and like we said earlier, right, prompting, it's an iterative process. So you might take this, fill in the blanks, start like that, but as you see the results and you see where the AI might be going off the rails, that's where you might go back and tweak your wording and, add some more instructions.
Yeah, or add more details, such as um you forgot um that you're needing it to make sure it's following all your procedures, your safety regulations, etc. And so it's always going to be a work in progress until you obviously get your final result. But this is one of the best prompting strategies that we can suggest because it gives um AI the paths and the um procedures that you're wanting it to follow because then you're not allowing it to hallucinate and so go off the rails and talk about something completely different that isn't towards your end result that you're looking for.
Gonna interrupt really
Yeah.
quickly there on this example. I've seen some pieces online. I'm not sure if this is necessary, but I've seen some recommendations where you actually would list like step number one, blah blah blah, step number two. How does that compare to kind of what you're describing? Is it kind of one and the same? Is that necessary?
I'll let you go, Hassan.
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, they can both work together. Like step-by-step prompting is also a strategy. It's where,
Mm.
you give it a task, but you give it these steps to follow so it does it in a specific way. So that can also be incorporated with this, right? It doesn't have to be, it's like two completely separate things by any means. Um, and yeah, and just with prompt engineering in general, what you might find is that if you're writing a prompt for a repetitive task, what you might do is you might start creating your own prompt library, right? You'll have the prompt written out and then you'll have blanks within the prompt for you to fill out. So you can just copy and paste that engineered prompt that you have and then use it for your use case. And, as you go through that level of hands-on prompt engineering, you'll start to see that you can mix a lot of prompt strategies together to get the response that you want.
Got it. Thank you. I guess while I interrupted, any other questions before we let them move on?
I'll add one thing to you, Katie, of another technique that I enjoy using is just making it doing it step by step to your point, but doing step one, getting that info right that I'm looking for it to complete before I move on to step two. Or I will tell it, hey, I want to start in step one and stay with me on step one. And I will tell you when we can move on to step two. And
Mhm.
so using it as that guide and that teammate, that it stays with you and figures out your first need, and then you can continue moving on. And then if you want to jump to step eight, you can totally jump to step eight because you're telling it what to do anyways. So, um, you're able to direct it a lot more in those steps, and it's a great like beginner friendly way of doing prompt engineering as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
I have a question. I
Yeah.
have a question. I think I understood you. I think I heard you say something about there's a way to secure the data.
Hmm.
So some of the things that I've been hesitant to do is like I want to analyze like reports or like financial data, but I don't want them to like be put out there like publicly. So I haven't done that. And even when I am, using it, I'm very careful about not using our company name and things of that nature. How can we secure our data if that's even possible if I do decide to upload so where it's not public?
Yeah, so there's a multiple ways of doing that. Um, One way is again, Copilot is pretty uh integrated, if you will. And so just checking out with Copilot, I'm pretty sure that it won't train on your data, it won't use your data. Um, and then You're going to want to check on T's and C's, terms and conditions with it as well, if that's what you're integrated into. Um, and then another way of making sure it's secure is making your
Anonymizing the data.
yes.
Yeah. So what that is that essentially it's kind of like having to follow HIPAA rules if you're familiar with healthcare at all. Instead of using someone's first name and last name, you would do like first initial and last initial, so that if that data did end up in someone's hands, it would be completely useless to them because there's no personal identifiers on there, there's no company name, it's just a bunch of numbers. So that's the long way of doing it. The other way is paying for an AI subscription. So, like we said, Claude does not train by default. If you pay for chat, there's a setting that you turn off so that it doesn't train on your data. Um, and then if you're in a Microsoft ecosystem, then Copilot is your only option. And that usually does not train on your data as long as you're on a paid plan as well. Um, and then the last option is it requires a little bit of technical know-how. It's having a local AI model on your computer. So when you use AI on like chatgpt.com, your request is going out onto someone else's server and then it's processing that request. So with the local AI, if it's on your machine, that data does not leave your machine. You can use AI if you're on a plane, if you don't have internet, if you're in a bunker somewhere, that AI is like on your computer. It's not going anywhere. So if you ask me as a developer, that's by far the safest way. Um, but there are other workarounds as well. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Slow finding the mute button. You said your LLM works in offline?
hmm Yeah.
The
So
Copilot out of the box works offline?
no, no. So
Okay.
Copilot, yeah, that's the thing, right? So if you're stuck in a Microsoft ecosystem, then Copilot's your only option. And that's not uh it's not an open source LLM. Yeah. So any LLM that's open source are the ones that you can download onto your computer.
And how powerful are those that, run
So
on a laptop?
right, right. So that's a good question. Of course, they're a lot less capable, if you will. It's kind of like, with the large AI models, like for example, DeepSeek, when DeepSeek came out, everyone was all up in arms about it because it was so good and it's free, right? But if you want to run DeepSeek on your computer, you can't just because the model is so large. But if you were to spin up a server on AWS and then download it onto there and then connect to your own server, then that's essentially doing the same thing, but there's a lot more technical steps that you're adding in between. So if you want to go down the local AI route and you're a consumer, you're probably going to be limited by performance. However, if you're a company, then you have a lot more options. I think OpenAI does licensing deals as well. So you can license it just for your company and all your data will stay in the sandbox and all of those things.
Yeah, and we will get into that soon at the end.
Thanks.
Of course. Any others? Cool. So for our next prompt technique, is constraint based. And so constraint is also similar to PB&J. The reason that we enjoy the PB&J analogy, is just because it can be used in a lot of the prompting techniques. So for constraint based, you're setting clear limitations or parameters to make sure the AI responds to your specific requirements that you're needing to make. And so some examples are budget constraints that you might have for a project, the timeline of I'm needing to get this project done before October 10th, etc. And then compliance rules of I'm needing to be in compliance of XYZ or to stay in compliance. You can give AI those parameters and it will stay within those parameters. Why do you do this? It prevents AI to from giving you info and input that's just not going to fit your needs. And so when you give it a budget, it will stay within that budget instead of telling you you can do this thing, but it will charge or cost you 10 times more than your actual budget is. And so if you don't give it a budget, then it's still going to do those things. And then you might have to go back and be like, I do have a budget, it's X, and it will stay within those guidelines. And so that's kind of where going in, editing your prompt comes in and giving it additional info within the prompt. And so this also helps align AI into real world decision making. And so we're running companies, we're part of companies that we have budgets, timelines on, and needing to make sure we give that info to AI so then um, it doesn't just give us random stuff that we can't even follow.
Awesome. Yeah, and just adding on to that, if you think about you're looking to hire a business consultant, and you have all the money in the world, you bring in a McKinsey consultant. The first thing they're going to do is try to learn absolutely everything about your company, what resources you have, what resources you don't have. So the constraint-based prompting is exactly that. You're telling the model what resources you have and don't have so that it doesn't go out there and it's like, okay, spend $500,000 on X, Y, and Z. Problem solved, so that's all that is. So let's look at an example. So when you start off with constraint-based prompting, you're going to, provide your main goal. So that could be, suggest ways to improve X, Y, or Z, help me increase margins by reducing X, Y, or Z. And then after that, you would provide the constraints you have. So we have a $10,000 monthly budget. We have a 60-day timeline, whatever that might be. And then lastly, this is more of an optional step, but it helps provide prioritizations for your LLM to incorporate. So prioritize strategies that reduce costs without reducing staff, so on and so forth. So those are the three uh, stages or three sections of the prompt, if you will. The third one is optional, but of course, the more context you provide, the more uh, on the nose your response with the AI will be. So now if you put all of that together, what that looks like is this. Suggest ways to improve cash flow for my retail business with these constraints. We have a $10,000 monthly budget, cannot take on new debt, and need to maintain at least 60 days of inventory. Prioritize strategies that optimize existing resources, improve payment collection, or reduce costs without reducing staff. Now, this is what you would call an engineered prompt. If you think about what this prompt would look like if you didn't apply the constraints, your output would be significantly different. If you didn't add that you have a $10,000 monthly budget, your output would be completely different. If you didn't mention you need to keep 2 months of inventory, your output would be different. So the goal with any prompting strategy is getting it to do what tasks that you're faced with, not just some vague random task.
Yeah. And so more info is always better um, in our use cases that we've seen. Um, and if you're not getting the results that you're looking for, either try another prompt technique or give it more details that you're like, well, um, I can't spend $10,000 a month. I can spend 5,000. And so going back and forth is also a way to a technique, even just going back and forth with AI to get the result that you're looking for. And so being safe while using AI is top of mind for everyone, including us. It's it's probably the top question that we get of how do I keep my data safe? And so kind of the things that we talked about, such as open source and air gapping AI, so then it's not going out to internet and being able to be reached from attackers, etc. Um, and then we talked about T's and C's, terms and conditions. When we say review them, we actually mean look at them, because in there it could say that you're willing to give data to the company and they can use it for marketing techniques or posts or what have you. And so you really have to look at T's and C's. Um, and the last tip that we have is if it is free, your data is the currency that you're paying, because it will train on that data if it is free, because they're giving you a free service. And so they will take that data that you're using, giving them, and they will share it, train their model. And so that's why we prefer paid versions of Chat, Gemini, Claude, etc. Um, from the free versions, and why we suggest if you are putting any company data that it is in one of those paid versions.
Yeah. And when we say actually look at the T's and C's and the privacy policy, those policies are created to make them absolutely impossible to look at. They're filled with legal language, and a lot of times you're not going to know what you're looking at. So that is exactly when you copy and paste it into ChatGPT and you write a nice prompt and you have it do the dirty work for you, essentially. You tell it what you're being wary about, that you're security cautious, data privy, all of those things, and then have it outline any security concerns. And that way it just makes it a lot easier. It speeds up the process. Um, and a lot of times, I've done this many times on tools that have embedded AI, and there are just egregious policies. There's egregious things you're agreeing to. There's this one where it was anything that you use, your company name, whatever, will become property of the platform that you're using. So any data you put in, they're free to use it as they wish. Anything that you create, they're free to use it as they wish. So especially if you're in a situation like Veronica, where you're looking to use uh, financial documents and whatnot, that it's very important to look at those T's and C's.
Wow, that's really helpful. I know we have a couple of minutes left, so before we wrap up, questions. Anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it, Chris.
Yeah, I'm curious if the JJ and Hassan, if there any things you've started using AI for in your personal life that you just like love using it for. It's been a big I don't know, game changer might be a little strong, but you're like, oh, this is great. Just something practical, fun, or it saves you time, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, so I've used it I will be honest, I go to Chat and Gemini instead of going straight to Google
Hmm.
with questions. And so I've had to look for a um, new roof for my house. And
Yeah.
so I will ask it to find me local roofers in my area and do research on it of I want someone that's cleaning or cleans after themselves, hardworking, quick, etc. Um, and so I will use it for things like that of just research proportions of things that I'm wanting to buy. I will also use it for travel, and so I will say I'm going to Chicago, for example. Give me the best deep dish pizzas that with reviews of um that's not too cheesy. And
Yeah.
so I would use it for things like that.
Cool.
For me, I would say it's been the deep research feature. If you're not familiar, what deep research essentially does is that, imagine you're going out to research a topic or something. What your process is going to look like is that, you do multiple different Google searches and then you read through the top links. You might look through Reddit, see what people are saying. You might look through authoritative sources to see what credible sources are saying, and then kind of put together a report based on that. So that's exactly what deep research does. It will go through 400 plus links and URLs, Reddit threads, all of that in a matter of maybe 2 to 15 minutes, depending on your topic and how
Wow.
complex it is. And it gives you a huge report. I mean, it's a great report and it's cited every single thing. So you can
Yeah.
go in and be like, okay, well, you got that from some random guy on Reddit. That's probably not something I should listen to. And so it that has been absolutely monumental. I use that in my personal life. I use that at work, all of the above.
Awesome.
Agree.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Love it. Well, Hassan, JJ, what's the best way if we have any follow-up questions or things to ask? What's the best way for us to reach out?
Yeah, so you can either reach out to us by our email addresses, or you can go to tribalai.com and go through our contact form and submit. I think we have ability for messages um on there, and so ask ask your question through there. Um, and we always look out for emails and willing to provide any answers or follow up conversations that you might have for your specific company.
Love it. Thank you so much. And before we drop off, and just so everyone knows, the recording for today, along with all the slides and everything, will be shared out this week. So it'll be in your inbox. You'll have access to it all. But just curious, JJ Hassan, if you were to leave us with one final piece of advice, one last resource, a recommendation that you have, what would it be?
I would say my top takeaway is always treat AI like an intern. You're always looking at it, you're looking at the results that it gives you. Um, I never trust the full result. I always look at it, make sure that it's actually providing the details that I'm asking it to. I know there's a lot of videos out there, YouTube shorts, what have you, of look, AI just filled out my uh, content calendar, for example. Um, it can do that, but you're still having to spend some time reviewing, looking it over, making sure that it's actually talking about what you're wanting to talk about.
It's great.
Yeah. I would say don't be scared, be excited. A lot of people get stuck in the doom and gloom of it. Just be excited instead. The amount of things that you'll be able to do once you really hone that skill is really surprising. And even now, every single day, I'm like, oh, wow. Like you just find new use cases all the time. And, JJ will attest to this. I say this all the time, like, wow, I'm so thankful for AI. I mean, it's really the greatest thing since copy and paste. So,
Love that.
yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing so much and for giving us some really like tactical, practical things to go and do and to experiment with. So thank you so much for joining us. Let's give Hassan and JJ another virtual round of applause. Thank you for being here.
I have a couple of admissions I need to do. Number one, I don't love presentations. Um, I love conversations though. So if y'all can help me out, drop questions into chat. Bridget will interrupt me. If you can unmute yourself, I don't know what the settings are. Feel free to do it. I'm not so obsessed that we get through my presentation. I'm more obsessed that we have conversations around what you guys really want to have conversations about. And so if something spars a shared experience or what about or we did, please, I believe that you guys are going to learn from each other, probably more for so than me. because I stand by what I said. Like, I don't believe anybody's an expert in this space. If we go back to Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point and it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert, even if I spent 10 hours a day on this, that'd be 1,000 days. That's like 2.5 years. AI changes so fast. What it is today versus 2.5 years from now is going to be vastly different. So we're all navigating this together. I'm just excited to help you navigate. So through that, we're going to ask the big questions. I'm going to give you some perspectives, some data, a strategic framework that we use at Trybl as we look at where and how to implement. And then I'd love for you to have the ability to learn from each other. So that being said, one of the questions, thank you for submitting, that you asked a lot, go ahead, Bridget, to the next slide, is do I really have to pay attention to this, Patty? Again, remember 3 years ago, I was opting out of all of this. So I know that feeling. There's a ton of data out there. So I try and keep up to date on all the most recent surveys. And the ones that I'm paying attention to the most right now are around more individual behavior at work than team behavior at work or organizational, because I believe organizations are in so many different points, and what the larges are doing, actually, my conversations aren't that much different than what we're struggling with. But to me, it's what are individuals doing for my productivity at work? And on the low end of the scale, I'm seeing somewhere between, 30 and 40% of your team members are using AI in getting their job done. On the higher end, I'm seeing this Microsoft LinkedIn number that says 75% of knowledge workers are utilizing it. And that makes sense to me, right? Data, AI is all about data. The knowledge workers are the folks sitting at a computer working with, finance, HR, marketing, accounting. They're not the folks hand-on in the mill or the bakers making the bread. So, key takeaway from here is somewhere between 1 and 3 and 3 and 4 of your team members are experimenting or utilizing AI. So how do you support them? How do you make sure you've got the policies and processes in place that talk about what you're comfortable with them using AI for, right? How do you make sure that you're controlling your confidential data that's not being shared, and or information that's coming back is being reviewed for accuracy, et cetera. So looking at the individual versus the company is one lens that I would say, are we at a tipping point? We're getting pretty close for sure. The next lens that I wanted to look at, Miss Bridget, is this is the typical technology adoption curve, right? So our organizations are somewhere in between, the innovators and the laggards. And most of us live in this early adopter to majority spot, right? The most of us are somewhere in this bell curve as to when and how we look at technology's role, how we adopt it, how often, we look to bring in new technologies. I layered on top of this a theory called Moore's Law. And this comes from a former CEO of Intel who said, pretty much we can double processor speeds every 2 years. And it is that processor speed for traditional software has often meant the jump to the next level, the jump to the next advancement, the 2.0 to the 3.0, or, the very static, rigid Salesforce, if you remember that was hard to customize, to the new, more, mobile responsive version that I could customize. That has been traditionally dependent on processor speed, and that would double every 2 years. AI, on the other hand, is doing some leaps and bounds, and their advancements are coming much quicker. So the estimate is somewhere around 6 and 8 months. So if I layer those two, my perspective is if it feels like technology is advancing faster, it's because just to stay where you want to be on this technology adoption curve, you have to 3x or 4x your ability to implement a new technology. So if it feels like that speed is ever increasing, this to me would say, yeah, it is. Does that mean I need to pay attention a little bit earlier, maybe than I'm comfortable with? My shared experience is yes. And then my last lens for this question is the keeping pace with business slide, Miss Bridget, the next one. And this one just came out as I was looking at research for recently. It came out of a Microsoft study that's like technology feels like it's not just like advancing in pace, but business just feels like it is. And Microsoft would say, well, yeah, things are just more. There's more, right? We can be interrupted up to 275 times a day by meetings, by emails, by pings, by chats, by Slacks, by this. Um, Meetings are happening as we're crossing time zones late into the evening. So I love that this community is very keyed into how do I use AI to support my team. So this research would tell me that adopting AI, is it time to pay attention to it? If you feel that your team is managing, taking on more, dealing with more, it's more complex. What used to take one email now takes six. AI is an opportunity and a tool to help your team members keep pace with the pace of business. Questions on that? Comments on this first big question? Okay. Another one, there was a lot of questions around of can I trust AI? And again, this goes back to this is a very different software than what we are used to. Right? I'm used to my POS system we sell, it goes into my ERP, it is removed from my inventory. It is a one to one. That happens. There is no gaps in that knowledge. It is software, I can trust it. AI is looking for patterns. AI is filling in gaps when it doesn't see patterns. AI is then responding in very human ways. And just as we accept flaws in human judgment and human logic, our seek of perfection in AI, when it's utilizing some of those same, when it's mimicking those same behaviors, using pattern recognition, might be a bit misplaced, which is why we continuously say treat it like an intern, right? Train it, test it, repeat. Making sure that you're utilizing the correct model, as we have reasoning and non-reasoning, as we've got some of the deep thinking. The model matters. Your data matters. I think I did a LinkedIn post on this. I think I said garbage in, garbage out like 25 years ago in trying to work with a CRM. But the same does hold true for AI. The more you can help it have data in context, data that is within a logical structure, the more likely it is to recognize those patterns, hence feel like you can trust it more. Um, and then also continuing to realize that AI is a software. It is not a one and done. It is not a set it and forget it, but it does need that sustenance. It does need that sustaining. It does need ongoing maintenance. It does need ongoing training. It does need, ongoing interactions. But at the end of the day, Hassan said this to me and it really stuck. Right now, it's currently the worst it will ever be. So is within these parameters, does it give you an ability to interact and work and start implementing the benefits while building trust within your AI systems? This was the other question that was probably asked the most on the registration forms, and what about my people? You'll hear a ton in the reading about human first AI, and that really is where we are right now. It's where I do believe we're going to stay for a while. You heard Hassan, and so you heard the technologists on my team and their viewpoint versus maybe my strategic viewpoint, but starting with your people, and you'll see this in our framework, starting with them, starting with their possibilities and their problems. That for us is where AI is currently the most powerful. And my hope is that it remains the most power. Someday it might be a human boss with an agent team. Those three stages are, again, from Microsoft's view of work. And if you email me at the end, I'm happy to share that study with you. But we're very much at this human with assistant stage. Microsoft would say the next stage is human agent teams. That is, an agent means it can take action. It's AI that actually takes action. So that is me partnering with an agent that takes action, often over having an overview. All right, this procurement, we hit this number. We're now down to 20. That triggers the AI agent. Go find me pricing, make sure it's within these parameters, make sure it's got a delivery date of this time, make sure it's coming from one of these approved vendors, and bring that back to me with your recommendation. But you don't do the thing. I need to approve and do the thing. And then eventually, human boss with agent team is when those agents are actually implementing with perhaps not your oversight. Definitely not there yet. But there are absolutely ways of implementing AI without disrupting your team. And some of the best shared experiences I can give you is involving them in the process, putting them actually at the forefront of the process, and looking at those spots where it's either hard to find talent, it's hard to attract talent, or their roles and jobs and positions have gotten so much more complex that they welcome a technology teammate, an assistant, an intern, call it what you will, to help them navigate now the complexity of that. Right? So many of our distributor clients, especially through COVID, were like, it used to be send an email and get a confirmation, and that was that procurement was done. Like, those days are done and haven't come back since COVID with the ongoing supply chain disruptions. Now it's send the email, now it's check again, look for make sure it was delivered, it wasn't delivered, where is it? What used to be one email now might be 10. That's where your team very likely is feeling stressed and looking for a technology teammate, and where AI, because it's repeatable, because it often is a spot where you can provide that oversight, it's a good opportunity there for AI.
Any questions on this? I know that this is a hefty part of the AI topic for small giants companies just who care for their people and are purpose driven. Any questions, thoughts from anyone here?
Thinking about that technology adoption curve, in your opinion, what is the most efficient grouping to be at? I mean, there's the leading edge, also known as the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
If you're in there too early, you're really first to wrestle with a new technology, but you're also an early adopter, so there's an advantage. So what's a good balance to think about?
Yeah, so I would be concerned if you were a laggard on this one, right? So because to Hassan's point, this is very quickly becoming a great equalizer. If you're where I was 3 years ago and being like, head in sand, hard pass, I would be concerned about you at a laggard. Um, I would also very honestly be concerned about you if you were an innovator, if you're already, if you've already implemented AI to a point that you're not providing overview into it, I would be concerned there as well. Between the early adapters, the early majority, and the late majority, it really is, where is your organization's comfort and skill level with technology? I wouldn't necessarily, if you've typically been a late majority, say, you know what, use AI and leapfrog everything. I would build up those skills along the way. I would say that will still need an increase in your tempo just because AI is moving faster. Hence, like I said, just to stay where you currently are requires you to move 3 or 4 times faster than what you've traditionally done. So I wouldn't necessarily say jump from, especially being a late majority into an early adopter. Stay where you're at, but definitely look for those pilot programs and realize that even if you're not as an organization, team members are for their own individual productivity. So, what do you do to support and guide them? So, one of my last recommendations to you that I'll give you now is, if you don't have an AI data usage policy, please create one. Help your team know what you believe is acceptable to provide to one of these LLMs. You would never want it to interact with your client data, any of your NDA information. Realize if you're not paying for the software, your data is your payment, right? These LLMs learn on data. Hence, the free versions utilize your data for training. If you don't want to use your data for training, you need to get into the paid versions. And oh, by the way, still pay attention to those T's and C's, because some of the paid versions you still need to opt out of training. So that policy for your team, no matter where you are on here, you've got some early adopters on your team, data would tell us. So make sure that you're supporting them with your HR policies so that they don't inadvertently, mistakenly, no harm meant, share data or interact in ways that you're not comfortable with. That's going to be what's annoying about this presentation as well. That it depends that always haunts us as business strategists and business leaders. Still holds true for AI. It depends. Where are you as an organization?
Curious, Patty, any examples that you've seen? I imagine the small giants community cares deeply about the human impact of this. And so, some of those fears that we talked about earlier, like, hey, this is going to replace people and all that stuff. Talking about, okay, can we use it to augment people's capabilities? Great,
Yeah.
thumbs up. But also use it to help, using technology in a way that's enhances even human impact and connection, right? So how are you seeing the technology be adopted in ways? Maybe you have a couple examples where hey, this is helping us not just say, hey, we're going to use the technology to replace what humans can do, but actually help us lean into what makes us uniquely human, because the technology can take care of that other stuff that was maybe things that we didn't like or whatever. Any
Yeah.
examples of that you're experiencing?
Yeah, I have a great example. We have a client who provides ABA therapy. ABA therapy is very intensive therapy. They provide it for children with autism and their families. So this is not, 1 hour a week therapy, but this is, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, intensive hands-on therapy for children with autism. So you can imagine what their scheduling looks like, and you can imagine what their schedule looks like when there's a cancellation. So they have a full-time scheduler who is actually a certified ABA therapist. So we're working with them on a system that helps do some automations, which is not AI, does some simple automations around cancellations for notifying the family if it's the therapist that canceled or the therapist if the client cancels. But also adding in some AI into that. They are Chicago based. So Chicago traffic is as ridiculous as ever. So you can imagine, someone on the north side of Chicago could take 2 hours to get to an appointment on the south side of Chicago. So instead of the therapist having to go through calendars and schedules and who's available and who's where, et cetera, we're working with them on a system that will provide to them some options and some choices, right? So if it's the therapist who canceled that day, do we have any options on a therapist who can take that 2 o'clock appointment? If they're done at 1 o'clock and they're south side and it's at south side, they might be able to. If they're done at 1 o'clock and they're north side, they're not going to be able to get down to that appointment in an hour. So we're bringing in GPS data, we're bringing in calendar data, we're bringing in, their HR data around their therapist. In order to allow their scheduler to become a part-time scheduler and go back to being a part-time therapist. Their president also gets involved with this. She probably spends, an hour, maybe two a night sometimes dealing with schedules So what can we do to take that off? Still put the options in front of them. They still have to make the choices, right? They still have that knowledge that AI doesn't, of this would be a better therapist replacement than this therapist. This therapist is better with adolescents versus, toddlers, etc. So it's not redoing the schedule. It's not automating that. Again, it's treating it like an intern, deep into the info. Find us some good solutions and put those in front of the scheduler or the president of the organization. Let them make the final call. And can we get that therapist at least a half of that FTE back to working with children instead of dealing with calendars?
Love that. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff and Adam, for the questions. Any others before we move forward? We've got about a little over 10 minutes, Patty.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So if you say, all right, I'm hearing you, Patty, right? People are using it. We need to look into using it. We can keep our humans first, and we can put in the safeguards that allow us to trust it. How do we move either, into experimentation from not using it, or how do we move from experimentation to operationalizing it? And we use a strategy called PASTS. And again, we believe go back into your future and bring forth what you do well, what makes you great. So this is our strategic framework when we look at where do we want to start implementing AI. So past, start with, next one for me, please, Miss Bridget. Past starts with the possibility or the problem. So if we utilize the example I just talked about, the problem was cancellations are not easy for us. Takes a lot of time for us to rework schedules, right? So that was the problem we were looking to solve. The people who's impacted, right? It's the scheduler, it's the president, it's also the therapist. How do we make that easy for them? It's also the parents of the children. How do we make, if they need to make a change, easy for them to make a change? If they're the ones being, getting the change, how do we get them good, accurate, quick information? So for very people-driven organizations like this community, put your possibility, your opportunity, what I'd love to be able to do, or the problem you want to solve, and the people at the very beginning of the process. Behind that becomes accessible and accurate data. So this is what AI, gets trained upon. So, one of the challenges we've had with that scenario I gave you is that some of their calendar data is connected to their billing data, which is a closed system. It makes it challenging for us to be able to create an API or a bridge to get that information. So very quickly understanding, can you access the information that you'll need to create the solution? And do you believe in it? Is it accurate? And or what precautions or what prompt engineering or what safeguards do you need to put around that data? And that's an important second step. After that, we go into a scope or a solution, and then the tactical. If it becomes a complex situation, it becomes a PRD or a product requirements document. If it's a simpler solution, I've got a lot of clients that I'm trying to keep information on them. I want to know the latest happenings on them. That's my possibility, is how can I be smarter about my clients' industries? Where's that, accessible and accurate data? It's news releases, it's trade information, blah, blah. It's very web-based. Then the scope and the tactics become much, much simpler. But those follow behind. Success, defining that very early. What does success look like? For the scenario I talked about, our goal is to get that FTE into a 50% scheduler and a 50% therapist. That will be success for us, not turning her fully into a therapist, knowing that these systems still need oversight, knowing that there'll always be outliers that need that human interaction. So what does success look like? And then finally, what do you need to do to sustain this system? What do you need to sustain this solution? AI is software, and we all know, all of our software needs updates, needs monitored, needs sustained. For AI, as a new model comes out, what is that? Is that something that we want to perhaps go from GPT-4 to GPT-5? Is there an advancement in 5 that makes our model better? Is it a very simple model that we can live on one of the minis, which makes it, much less data intensive and or much less energy intensive and or much less expensive? So realizing that none of these are one and dones, but having a system, having a plan for how these will be sustained, important to be part of that first strategic framework. And then finally, my 6 final takeaways. So I always go to webinars or live events, and I'm like, I just want to come out with 2 things that I either didn't think about before, I didn't know about before, that really resonate. So hopefully 2 out of these 6 will resonate with you. The first one I've already talked about, developing that AI usage policy. There's very little that I will tell you as absolute in the AI world right now, but for me in this AI world, this is an absolute. Even if you as an organization are not planning to use it, your employees are. Develop your AI usage policy so that you support them and they understand what's in bounds and what's out of bounds. Treat it like an intern. Don't let it go rogue. Don't set it and forget it again. Train it, task it, review it, repeat. It gets better and smarter the more you work with it and utilize it, just like some of our best young teammates or interns. Because we don't talk a lot about this, but if you've explored AI and you're like, Patty, I'm just not seeing it, I'm frustrated, I'm whatever, we're hearing that quite a bit. And some of the challenges is that because we're not a one size fit all company, some of the off the shelf solutions are falling flat because it doesn't take into effect what the dynamic nature of our organizations are, especially for those of us who maybe run differently than some of our competitors and being more purpose driven. So if you're frustrated with some of the off-the-shelf solutions, I hear you. You might consider a more of a custom solution and or some more like custom GPTs to work through some of what you're hoping to accomplish. No matter what, review your T&Cs. So many of us are just used to pressing the accept button. For AI solutions, you must read the T's and C's. You must understand what's using your data. You must understand of things that are generated, who owns what. So for these systems, whether it's an LLM, whether it's a AI assistant tool, irregardless, if it involves AI, these are ones that you absolutely need to review and understand the T and C's from a data standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from a security standpoint, and from a generation standpoint. And then the last one, I am in no way a CPA, and so this is not accounting info, but some of the latest updates in the bills have made changes to the R&D deductions. So have that conversation with your CPA as to if you are investigating AI, operationalizing AI, what those internal and or external costs might be able to be depreciated differently based upon some of the recent changes in our tax code. And then finally, our view is that the real power of AI lies in capturing, protecting, and activating your tribal knowledge, what already makes you awesome. Start there. Start with your people. Start with what makes you unique and awesome in your superpowers and see how AI can support both of those. How'd I do? Whew.
Patty, I've got a question around data privacy and protection.
Yep.
One of the traps that our team has gotten stuck in is thinking everything that they're working on is like proprietary and sacred to us. But in reality, someone would have to get a hold of that information at the right time, with the right mindset, at the right moment to know what to even do with it.
Mhm.
Outside of like personal data, financials, strategy, should we be a little bit looser with our thinking around like if you can leverage AI with the data that's in front of you to make it better, faster, quicker, should we? Or should we be more conservative with what we're putting in there?
Yeah, so there's a couple like non-negotiables, right? So I always talk about like let's start there, depending upon your industry. For example, the group we were working with healthcare, there's HIPAA requirements. So whatever those HIPAA requirements, so with those HIPAA requirements in mind, do not pass data, do not provide data in any way that is not HIPAA compliant, right? So no last names, all those requirements, those to me are those are non-negotiable, right? Anything that's under NDA with a client or with a vendor partner or something of that nature, that to me is a non-negotiable. Irregardless as to what someone might need to go through to find it, those to me are legally not able to be shared outside of my core organization. Those are a hard pass no. Outside of that, unfortunately, I go back to that. It depends. How you run your organization, where your comfort level is. We've had some clients have absolutely zero issue loading up their, connecting utilizing their CRM data into an LLM directly in order to do some, analysis of, win rates. Who should we be concentrating on? Where are we really good? We've got other clients who would absolutely never do that, believe that, their client list, their lead list is sacred. Somehow they know about, buyers that none of their competition know. It's not necessarily how I run Odea. I run Odea very much be on the offense, not the defense. Let them catch you, to your point. But it does go back to kind of your organization's comfort level. And um, I don't have unfortunately, I don't have a definite for you versus it sounds like
Mhm.
you're willing to say, what should someone be able to, grab that, mimic that, see that, let them try and keep up with us. And candidly, that's how I run Odea. But other organizations who are, a bit more defensive and understand or have some additional sensitivities would say there are definitely other things that we're not comfortable sharing within an LLM. And that's why I say working through that AI usage policy, number
Mhm.
one, helps you understand what the entire team is comfortable with. And then B gives the parameters so that your team who wants to play within the boundaries stays within the boundaries.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
We've got a couple more minutes left here, so Narelle will close out with your final question. You are muted. Happens to the best.
Had to be that person.
Somebody had to do it.
To Adam's point, I know we were advised, I just wanted to share that as much as I might personally prefer ChatGPT, for business, if we properly have our Copilot license associated with our, what's that, subscription for, can I think, the Microsoft subscription, that whatever security it'll follow. So I am more on the conservative side, and so that's what we've instituted is the proper Copilot license with the security on our licenses. I feel safe putting that information there, just like it's in my emails. I've got stuff in my emails now that I wouldn't want in the public domain. So that's been our approach, and we're on the more conservative side.
Yeah, and that's huge, Noral. Thank you for sharing that for a couple of reasons. Number one, when I talk about these kind of seismic shifts happening faster with AI, GPT-5 just got connected into Copilot. If last week you'd have talked to Hassan about Copilot, he'd have been like, bottom of the barrel if you're talking to me about LLMs, right? Like just like bit like it don't besides writing your emails, it ain't gonna help you a whole bunch, right? He just for the first time the other day, he's like, I don't know. Copilot with connected to GPT-5, there might be some benefit. So Copilot just hit one of those kind of advancement moments in his estimation. And then, just as he said, just as you're seeing it every place, whether you're in PowerPoint, whether you're in Microsoft, and then or whether you're in PowerPoint, whether you're in Word, your Excel, or if you are a Microsoft base and you're running Teams and you're running Outlook for your email, um, that security is guided by your enterprise security. So if you do have some concerns, the Copilot within there, Neural, to your point, is they already see it in my teams, they already see it here, they already see it there. It's being governed by the same kind of wall, if you will, via Microsoft.
Thank you everyone for joining. Enjoy your weekend ahead and best of luck as you continue on this AI endeavor. Thanks everyone.